Welcome to my podcast, Cool Down with Abhay, where I bring in different people from the sports industry to come and engage in conversation with me so that you and I can learn more about the Indian sports ecosystem. Let's get right into it. So, hey guys, welcome to the second episode of my podcast. And due to the coronavirus, this episode is going to be conducted via Zoom. And I figured most sports in today's world are going through a slump due to what's happening. But one sport is actually not suffering as much as the rest, that's esports, which is why today's episode is going to be about that. And I've actually got a few facts that back up my case over here. Obviously, since most people are sat inside, kept indoors, stuck on their phones all day, online gaming has picked up tremendously. And the usage of gaming has increased by 75% in this month alone, and viewership on gaming has increased by 31% this month, which is incredible. So today I've got Dr. Rushindra Sinha, who is the CEO and founder of Global Esports, and welcome.
Thank you so much, Abhay, for having me. I know you've been trying to get in touch with me for a while, and I've been missing your messages and your calls, and it's just been really busy because, as you rightly said, our work has almost doubled in the past 2 weeks with the lockdown coming down.
Yeah, that's not a problem at all. Don't worry. So I figured before we start talking about esports, I want people to learn more about your journey. So why don't you tell us how you got into esports?
So this is a long story. I'll try to keep it as short as possible. So I started gaming at the age of 3 years old. I remember the first game I played was at my parents' hospital. It was on a black and white computer. It was called Chips Challenge. And I was 3, right? So obviously I would only enter the hospital and use it after hours. I would sneak in sometimes, even though I was just 3. I went from...
At 3 years old? You were 3 years old?
Yes, at 3 years old. Yeah. PC you would put in, and games like Mario and Contra and various other old school console games. From there, through Mohit, who is now my co-founder at Global Esports, his brother introduced us to the LAN cafe culture. So he introduced us to Counter-Strike, and we would go to this cafe, and we were like 9 or 10-year-old kids. We were like literally this chiller party that we would be on the side, and the teenagers wouldn't let us play because they were the pros over there. And Mohit and me, would wait every time someone went out for a smoke break, or they would went out to sit and plan their teams or strategize. Mohit and we would sneak in some game time, and that's how we started learning. Because we didn't get enough pocket money at home to go and even pay for our own time. So we sneak in a few minutes every time someone else went out for a break. And we started getting better at the game, eventually formed our own clan and started competing in tournaments. So started with regional tournaments at that cafe. Then went on to doing a lot more tournaments, regionally, intercollegiate. Then even went on to some national and international tournaments.
Nice. So where was this cafe that you had first played and got introduced to the game?
This was in Bandra itself. It was very close to where we stayed. More than I just stayed 2 lanes apart. So the cafe was really nearby. So it was just a walk from here.
Nice. So did you ever think of actually going on and playing as an athlete?
We did for a while. We actually played in the WCG qualifiers, and we played a lot of tournaments. After Counter-Strike, we did play Dota 2 professionally as well. Mohit played a lot more than I did, but definitely we gave professional gaming a shot back then. Back then it was not esports. We weren't athletes. We were just playing video games and tournaments for fun. And the prize money, I think the highest prize money tournament that we played was about 5,000 rupees, and that was a huge deal for us.
Wow, yeah. And when was this? How long ago was this?
2002, 2003, around that time.
So why don't you tell us about how you got the idea for Global Esports and what made you want to start it? And I know that even while you were in school, you used to participate and you used to write codes and stuff for different, I think, gaming companies and stuff.
I'll tell you a little bit about my story leading up to Global Esports, so it'll give you guys a better connect. So as I said, we more than I used to play Counter-Strike and Dota professionally, but we never thought of it as professional gaming, right? We weren't getting a salary. We were doing it with the team. We were going in competing tournaments, winning prize. From there, we started playing online games. From there, we started playing online, and we moved from the LAN cafe to playing online. And that's when we got introduced to LAN gaming in the form of sitting at home. We all used to log onto the WinCable server and play. That's actually how we started. First, it was 3 corridors, custom map of Warcraft, and then went on to Dota. And from there, we just kept on playing more games online. We really got into Ragnarok Online, which was similar to World of Warcraft. It was really popular in Asia back then. So it was around 2000. Wow, 2000 around 2003, 2004, when we started playing. And there came a point that Mohit and I played this game so much that we became really, really good at the game. And we were among the top few players in the country. So much so that we had started emailing the developers. We started sending them emails that, why don't you make these changes? These items are overpowered. Let's try this out. But obviously, I'm sure they get millions of such emails every day. We got no response for any of those emails. So we decided to take matters into our own hands. So I started learning scripting, backend programming, C#, C++, understood how the game was built, worked with a lot of other programmers from across the globe. We had, designers and programmers from Berlin. We had people from the USA. We had people from all over. Some people were in Hong Kong, Macau. So we literally worked with a team from across the globe and rebuilt Ragnarok Online from scratch as how we would have envisioned it.
And what did they think of it when you actually submitted to them?
We didn't send it to them. We just launched it as its own independent game. So we launched it as a private server, as a private game. And we were, for I think about 18 months that we ran the server, we were number one in the world. And the response was absolutely overwhelming. And in fact, like as 15-year-olds, we were doing anywhere between $2,000 to $5,000 a month, which was way more money than we had ever seen. And all this was just by playing a video game, right? That's how it started. It went from playing a game to wanting to learn how to make one.
That's literally like the dream life.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we never looked at it as a way to make money, right? It was just something we were doing while we were in school and then in college, just for fun, and we were making money out of it. So it wasn't really like a task or something that we had to do. It was just something we would do in our free time. So anyway, we ran that server for a while. Then I got into med school. Mohit started his journey of filmmaking, and we realized that we were spending less and less time on this server, this hobby project. So in 2009, when we got an offer from an Australian company to acquire the server, we happily sold it off, and that became our first acquisition, our first exit in the gaming space.
And by that time, like how much did the value grow by then?
We're not allowed to disclose the amount. It wasn't very high, but it was way more money than we had ever seen. So it was, in dollars, I would say it was 5 digits.
Wow, that's a lot. And you were still in school?
It was a lot of money for 16, 17-year-old kids.
Wow, yeah, for sure. Then what happened after that?
So from there, I was already bitten by the programming bug. I wanted to learn more about the backend side, about how coding works, about how things are made. So I started doing as many online tutorials as I could, going through all the forums. Remember, this is like 2005 to 2008, where you don't have all the courses and the online resources that you do today. So it was really difficult to find resources online. So it was hard going through forums and actually having to ask people questions and waiting a few days. Sorry, my camera is being a bit jittery. And waiting a few days to get a response. But eventually scrounged enough data to learn, started doing a lot of web development, started my own web design firm, and started doing freelance web development for a lot of companies across the globe. Did a lot of iOS and Android app development, started learning that. And there was a time that I was spending more time on the computer than in the hospital. And that's when I knew that I wanted to do something in the tech space, the space. I wasn't really sure what, I was still figuring it out. But that's why as soon as I got done with med school, I moved to San Francisco. I was staying at this place called the Hacker House, which is just a collection of people from all over the world, much like myself. They are working at companies like Apple, Google, Microsoft, Lyft, Uber, Dropbox. There were people who had their own startups. They were pitching to VCs. So I would go along with them to these VC pitches, meet all these VCs, understand how startups work, what all you need to do to register a startup, all the legalities, the taxation behind it, just really what a VC does and what are the different various stages of funding and why do you need funding? What do you do with that funding? So just understanding and absorbing everything I could from Silicon Valley, the heart of every startup's dream. And that's also where I met my co-founders, along with whom I later moved to LA to start my own social media startup.
Oh, what was that?
So that was a company called Hashtag. It was basically a social media aggregator. So back then, this was in 2014 when you had a lot of social media. So the Vine and Snapchat were really popular back then. So everyone was logging on to different apps, right? You would log on to Twitter, check your notifications, then log on to Instagram, check your stuff, log on to Facebook, then log on to Snapchat, go Vine. You were just bouncing between apps and notifications. So on the front end, we built an app that basically aggregated all of these.
Honestly, in today's world, that still exists as much as then.
It did even back then, more so back then. Now, of course, there are other solutions, but and now people are more loyal to certain social media and they stick on that. At that time, people are still experimenting, right? Because it was all new. Everyone wanted to be everywhere. Now, most people have chosen their social media choice and they spend maximum time on that. But that's what it was. It aggregated it on the front end. On the back end, it gave us access to all this data, which we are working with advertisers, telling them where they should spend their marketing budgets. So it gave us really keen insight on understanding how the world of social media works.
Okay.
That was our story in LA. After that, I wanted to again formalize. I realized I didn't have any formal education in programming. So I attended this course from this company called General Assembly, which is basically what they call a hacker's boot camp, where they cram 3 years of engineering into 3 months. So you are basically a slave for 3 months. 90 days, you live, eat, sleep, work out of there and just do programming. And they're teaching you nothing else but that. So I think in that duration of 3 months, I churned out almost 15 iOS and Android apps and worked through so many projects and startups. It was just a crazy experience. It was crammed into 90 days.
So how did you find your way back to India after all of this?
Yeah, so this was in 2015, 2016. In 2017, after that, I of course went to Stanford Graduate School of Business to do their innovative leadership in campus program. I got done with that in 2017 and came back to India to explore opportunities, whether in tech, whether it's in healthcare, because the startup boom was just happening over here. There were billions of dollars of investments coming in for various types of startups. So I came back. I said, look, I have all this experience from the US. Let me come back and do my own tech company, and I'll raise funding and I'll do something interesting in the startup space. And my goal at that time, I was looking at something between the tech and the healthcare space. So when I came back, I was trying with various startups, meeting different VCs, pitching different ideas, trying to get a team together to do something in the health space. And that's really when Global Esports happened. When TI7 was announced, they said there's a $25 million tournament happening for Dota 2. And I called up my best friend Mohit and I was like, bro, we used to play this game back in the day for like 1,000 rupees, 2,000 rupees. It has evolved now to $25 million. Imagine if we just stayed on, right? It possibly could have been you and me on stage, right? Every person wants to think that they can get to the highest tier of gameplay.
Of course, yeah.
Fine, we're not going to play the tournament. Let's at least watch it together. So he said, yeah, sure, let's do like a reunion. Let's get the old gang back together. So we started texting all the people that we used to play Dota with back in the day. And we said, let's do a pub storm. Let's all watch it together. Right. And all of them got really excited. And within a day, we had about 30, 35 people that wanted to watch. And I was like, bro, there's no way I'm hosting 35 people at my house. Like, that's a house party I'm just not willing to host. So we started looking for alternate locations. And then we had the bright idea to approach a traditional sports bar, since they already had the sound equipment, the projector, everything to showcase any traditional sport. We thought we'd just plug in our laptop and watch it as it would, right? But it wasn't that easy, obviously, because it was a Saturday night and very few bars are willing to let us close their regular operations for us to watch video games.
Okay. And how open were they to the idea of actually hosting an esports event though? No?
Not at all, because they said it's a Saturday night, right? I mean, most bars and clubs are absolutely packed. They don't need to be hosting video games and driving away the regular audience.
Yeah, that's true.
So they were in fact quite apprehensive about doing it. Then we finally found a place that said, sure, you can use it, but you have to book the entire space. So it's like your private event and no one else will be allowed inside, and then you can do it. Like, we need a minimum guarantee of 100 people. So Mohit and I looked at each other. We're like, okay, we have to figure this out. We need 100 people. We're at 35 now. So we went to the Dota 2 community on Facebook and we made a poll and said, we plan to host this pub stop. It's just a bunch of fans that want to watch the game together. Who's interested? And within a day, we had 250 RSVPs.
Wow.
And we're like, holy shit, there's a demand for this, right? Like, we never imagined that the community would have wanted this, because we just wanted to watch the game. That's all. Like, for us, it was just about wanting to watch the game together on a Saturday night, probably have a couple of drinks, order some food, just chill out. A regular Saturday night, just watching the game you love with your friends.
Yeah.
And it turns out a lot of people wanted the same experience. There were people willing to travel from Pune, from Vapi, from Bangalore. There were people that came from Hyderabad. Like, I was absolutely shocked that there were these 18, 19-year-old kids traveling to a different city to watch a video game together.
Yeah, wow, that's so unexpected.
It's something that I had not imagined, right? Because I was very closely connected to the gaming world, as in I played a lot, but I was never part of the community, as in I never went to all these events, right? Because I was in US all this time.
Yeah.
So it was just amazing for me to watch. And that's when Mohit and me had this bright idea. We're like, wow, like, we have this entire event that's popped around from you and me wanting to watch the game. And then Red Bull approached us and they said, we'll sponsor part of the event. We'll give free cans to everyone that's there the entire night. Then, Steel Series came on board and said, we'll give free mouse pads to anyone that comes. All they have to do is, hashtag Steel Series and tweet about it. and there was a merchandise stall that was set up. There was a local cafe that came and set up a 1v1 tournament scene over there between the games. And all of a
This
sudden,
was
from us just wanting to watch the game, it was an event.
this was all at the same event.
Yes, this was all at the same event, and this was all in a span of 4 days.
Wow, that's incredible.
So we keep joking around. Like, we never meant to start Global Esports. Like, it was an accidental startup. We had no intention of doing a startup and setting up an esports organization and having teams. It was just a bunch of gamers that wanted to watch the game with fellow gamers. That's it.
Yeah. So how
It was as simple as that.
so how did you turn the
And
one day event
that's what it
into-
was, right? For us, it ended over there. We actually, like, for us, after that event, we're like, okay, cool. Haha, we had this one pub storm. Great. Let's go back to our normal lives. I went back to the hospital the next day. Mohit, as a filmmaker, went back to his filmmaking career, went back to Bollywood, continued making his movies. And that's when we started getting emails from other brands saying that, oh, we didn't realize that you had such an event. It was really short notice for us. When's the next one? We would love to sponsor it. And we started getting emails from people that attended saying that, oh, are you going to do the same thing for a CSGO major? Are you going to do it for the Overwatch World Cup? Are you going to host like the League of Legends Worlds? And suddenly Mohit and I were like, wait, there's an actual demand for this. Like, and it's not just Dota, right? It's for all the other sports as well. So we started hosting smaller such events. And then an Overwatch team approached me saying that they were falling 1% short to compete in our teams. I used to play Overwatch competitively at the time. As I was just climbing the ladder. Every time I would come home from the hospital, get bored, I would log on and play Overwatch. Like, that was just my escape from my day-to-day. And I ended up getting really good at the game. So a team approached me and said, we want someone to fill in for us and play a few games that competing in this tournament. So I was like, sure, I'm not really good, but I don't mind giving it a shot. And we ended up doing really well. And then actually I went with them to play a LAN tournament. And then they told me, so they were sponsored by this cafe in Chennai. And they told me that the cafe was shutting down because it wasn't doing so well. So they were going to disband the team. I was like, don't disband the team. How much money is it? What do you need funding for? They said it's primarily just when we travel for LAN tournaments. That's about it. So it's just travel and accommodation. And that's all we need. And the cafe was taking part of the prize money, so they could cover that amount and they would pay it upfront. I was like, okay, I'll do the same thing. Like, don't worry about it. We've set up this little thing called Global Esports, which we're doing gaming events for. We'll sponsor it. We'll come on board as a sponsor for the team. So we started sponsoring the team and I was playing in it. Eventually, I got really busy at the hospital. They found another player and they started getting really good at the game. They started competing in more tournaments, winning more LAN tournaments, started competing in international tournaments. And that's when we rebranded the team to Global Esports. And, we started funding everything for the team, got jerseys printed, and suddenly we had an esports team that was competing in tournaments. And when we competed for Asia Cup in Singapore, that's when we got introduced to a few Singaporean teams over there. They said, we love what you've done with this team in India, where you came on board, you supported them, you covered their travel and accommodation, you got them the gear that they needed, you got a coach on board. Can you do the same thing for us? Nice. We were like, sure, why not? And we did the same thing for them. And then they got really good at the game. They became the best team in Singapore, started competing in larger Asia level tournaments, and we got introduced to South Korea. And Mohit and I went to South Korea and we started scouting talent over there and set up an Overwatch team in South Korea. And we started recruiting and set up a Fortnite team in South Korea. Then we set up our boot camp in South Korea. And things just started snowballing. And it came to this point that we had 5 teams across the globe with international players who we are paying salaries for. We had a coach, we had a boot camp. And Mohit and I were like, okay, dude, we have an actual business at our hands. This is a startup that we were looking for. Like, we were just doing it as a hobby on the side, as we've done every other project like the Ragnarok server and multiple projects that we worked on. So Mohit and I also worked on side projects when it came to Mohit's filmmaking, right? We did a film and Mohit actually won the Tribeca Film Festival as one of the hobby projects that we did on the side. We won the Beijing Film Festival as well. I, in fact, acted in that, film as well.
Okay.
So we've continuously done these hobby projects.
So how many countries are you at right now?
So we have players from across 12 countries right now.
Okay, nice. And how many?
So it just went from one other hobby project to expanding to the point that we were paying salary and supporting so many teams and players that we were like, okay, we need to take this a little more seriously, spend some more time. So in August of 2018, Mohit quit his job as a filmmaker. I quit my full-time job as a doctor, and we started doing this, and understanding how to run this as a business. We incorporated and registered in the end of November, so almost first week of December in 2018. So now it's been about 15 months that we've been operating. We have 12 teams across the globe, and spread across 12 different countries with different players. It's spread across 9 esports titles. We have close to about 100 people in the company, including players, the support staff, analysts, coaches. We have, our editors. We have a cinematographer. We have an entire production team that goes along with it. We have freelancers. We have contractors. We have content creators that we work with on a day-to-day basis that are exclusively signed to us, as well as some non-exclusive ones. So we've suddenly grown into this esports ecosystem, and we host events and tournaments, and there's just so much that's happening. But for us, we've just taken it one day at a time, one event at a time, one thing at a time, literally, and come to the point where now suddenly we're doing so much. And we raised our seed round of funding last year from VCATs. And again, my experience in startups from the US helped us get to where we are so far.
While doing a little bit of my research, I saw that you actually hosted an event, I think at DY Patel Stadium last year.
Yes, at DY Patel Stadium.
Tell me what that was like.
So that was actually, we've been hosting a lot of events and tournaments on the side. We haven't really spoken much about it because the goal of that is community building. So one of those examples was intra-collegiate event that we hosted. So they have a sports event that they host every Olympia, which is intra-collegiate between all the 56 faculties, various colleges across India. So last year in 2019, we decided to add esports to that mix, and we hosted FIFA, Counter-Strike, PUBG Mobile, and Nintendo. It was Super Smash, I believe. Super Smash Ultimate or Super Smash Bros. I'm not sure which are those, but one of the two we hosted, and we had about 20,000 students that we catered to from DY Patel, and it was at their stadium.
You got 20,000 attendance over there.
Yeah, that was football for the entire event because we hosted it at the DY Patel Stadium. So it's an IPL stadium, so it's absolutely massive.
That's amazing. I'm so happy that so many people actually showed up for an esports event. I'm really proud.
Yeah. I mean, they obviously had the entire event also included traditional sports. But the response for esports was brilliant, right? Because there was something for everyone. We had everything from Switch to PUBG Mobile, which was on mobile. We had console games. We had FIFA as well on the console, as well as Counter-Strike for the PC players.
That's amazing. So can you tell me about, so somebody is watching this and they want to know how to actually become an esports athlete. What kind of advice would you give to them? What's the pathway?
Step one, just spend a lot of time learning and understanding the game. So I like to give this example a lot. Just the number of hours you spend on a game does not mean you will get better at the game. Yeah. That is absolutely not. It has to be diligent practice. You need to be very focused. You need to focus on improving. You need to keep setting goals for yourself and make sure that you're improving and getting better compared to yourself, not to any of your teammates or your friend. The best example that I really like to throw around a lot, that if all you required was number of hours, every taxi driver would be an F1 driver, right? They would be with a Narayan Karthikeyan. But Narayan Karthikeyan probably spends just a couple of hours a day in his actual car. The rest of the time is spent theorizing and understanding what he needs to do to get better, learning from people that know more than him, probably getting a mentor or a coach, seeing his improvement and really tracking and plotting that progress to make sure that you're getting better at the game, as opposed to just spending more hours on the game. I think a lot of people confuse that for becoming a pro player. I get a lot of messages. I spend 12 hours a day playing, but are you getting better?
Yeah, and what kind of tournaments do you think that they should participate in to get recognition or anything like that?
So I would say, there are enough tournaments happening online. There are a lot of platforms that let you do it on an individual basis as well. I mean, there's tournaments, there's platforms like Battlefield Tournament, even in India. There's things like Gaming Monk, MPL. There's so many platforms that you can just connect to and start getting used to it. But I would recommend, don't jump straight into the tournament scene. Even if you win these tournaments, it doesn't necessarily mean, again, that you're getting better. So I would recommend, let's first concentrate on getting better as a player and climbing competitive ladder. There will come a point that you will get noticed. And of course, a great way to get noticed is start streaming your progress. If you are streaming everything, it'll show a great progression that you started right here. And now your progression has gone up to this point and you will get noticed for sure.
So what are the skills that you guys as Global Esports look for in a player?
So at Global Esports, you have a very different outlook. We really look at creating superstars instead of hiring them. We look at players that have the potential to grow big, those that can really, they have a positive attitude. They can synergize and work well with the team. They work well under high pressure situations. They are very open and malleable to taking feedback from a coach and really working with the team and growing and becoming a better player, as opposed to playing, because all these are team games, right? We don't necessarily need the best player at his particular role. We need someone that can work well with the team and provide a team-based outcome.
Yeah. So in our country, a lot of people look at esports as, oh, it's just gaming, it's not nothing, that kind of attitude. So I want you to sort of give them an opening to a pathway to what it actually is. Like, can you tell me, in an esports team, how many you
Mhm.
have 100 employees, right? So what are the
Right.
different kinds of opportunities that people actually have to work with?
Wow, opportunities in esports are actually endless, right? So think about everything in cricket. I like to give this example because it's the easiest to kind of reference to and understand. You have just 11 cricketers in Team India, right? But then you also have subs. Great, that's still a finite amount. Now think of the entire cricket ecosystem, right from the broadcasters to the shoutcasters to the analysts to the coaches to the training academies to the low level things, right from the Ranji Trophy to IPL. There's so many other sectors. So when you think of Team India, you don't think of just the 11 cricketers. You
Right.
think of the millions of jobs being created because of cricket as an ecosystem. People need to start looking at esports in the same way. It's not just about being an esports athlete, right? When you think of just Counter Strike, and I'm giving you an example of one game, think of just Counter Strike. It's not just about the 5 people on the team or the 2 substitutes. It's the analysts, it's the the support staff, it's the coach, the assistant coach, the strategist, the performance coach for the team. We have nutritionists now popping up in various esports companies. You have a therapist and a psychologist that works on bettering the performance of the players. You have shoutcasters, you have content creators, you have people that work in the management, team managers, again people that work, editors, graphic designers, social media. There's so much that goes into this entire thing, just creating
Yeah.
the entire esports ecosystem. And we not only want players to know and understand that, we want everyone to know that there's an opportunity in the gaming industry. It's not just about being a player or being a content creator. Don't
Yeah.
think that I can just be a pro athlete or a streamer. There's so much more. In fact, just players and content creators contribute only 25% of global esports' arsenal of people.
Okay.
So there is a lot more opportunity. That being said, a lot of people that are in global esports have transcended from being a player or a content creator, where they started off as a player or content creator and then learned other roles. You can skip that and you can start training directly for the role that you are interested in. For example, a lot of pro players, when they retire, become shoutcasters, become broadcasters. That is similar to what you see in cricket, right? A lot of people, when
Yeah.
they retire from cricket, they become broadcasters and shoutcasters and commentators. In esports, you can actually start training to do that without having to become a content creator or an esports athlete. You
Yeah.
can get in early. You
Yeah.
can get ahead of the curve and start focusing on those skills. At the same time, all the people that are already esports content creators and athletes, we at Global Esports work towards making sure we are catering to their soft skills and hard skills as well, making sure that we're teaching them software to, whether it's photo editing, video editing, working on managing their social media pages, working with brands, getting brand deals. So we give them a holistic understanding of how the esports ecosystem works, so they have job opportunity even after they are no longer playing as an athlete or a content creator.
Yeah. So after everyone who is watching, I hope you actually heard that and you realize that it's not just gaming; it's a whole industry out there,
Yes.
and there's lots of opportunities. Um, could you? So earlier this year, I actually met with Nimish, who works with Fnatic, and I
Right.
asked him about athletes and how they train for esports. So I'm
Mhm.
wondering if you would be able to walk me through the process of a day in the life of an athlete.
Sure. So it varies for different teams because we also have like mobile gamers, we have PC gamers. So it would vary slightly from team to team depending on the team's requirements. But on an average, the day would usually start a little later because practices go on till late. So the breakfast is usually around 9:30, 10 a.m. Around 10:30 is when everyone gets to their station to sit and plan out what they're going to work on that day. They'll probably sit to the coach and the analyst and kind of structure their day, how many scrims they need to go through, what their plan is, and then dive straight in. They'll do their first block of scrims. Once that is done, that usually runs about 3 to 4 hours. Once that is done, they'll sit for lunch, and over lunch, they're usually discussing and seeing what happened in the scrim. Then in the afternoon, evening session, usually we have, VOD analysis where they will sit and watch the game footage. They'll sit and watch the scrim footage, watch footage from other teams, understand what these teams are doing, and try to form strategies to work against every individual team. Then go in for our second block of scrims and start focus on implementing everything that we have discussed and learned in the previous block. and then again break for dinner, and then usually it's we at night we either do another block of scrim, or it's usually individual practice where people are focusing on either one-on-one sessions with the coach, or they're just focusing on bettering themselves and either doing aim practice, or they'll call it a day and probably play a game of Dota or something else just to blow off some steam, and then get back to some aim training before they go to bed.
It's very interesting. So there are a huge variety of games and lots of different genres
Right.
you can participate in. So how would you differentiate between a professional esport game and an amateur esport game? I think that's something I
I
would
think
want to know.
esports is a very wide term, which is again similar to sports. Anything from a kho to a kabaddi to a chess to a cricket and hockey or anything. It's all sports,
Yeah,
right? So esports really encompasses any game. So the definition of esports is it is a competitive game played between either individuals or teams. So that is, so any game that really is competitive, that has the viewership and constitutes having a team and focusing energy towards it, probably not. The esports scene right now is pretty much determined based on the scale of the tournaments that are happening. So a lot of them are publisher-run tournaments, or there are some larger tournament organizers that focus on hosting these tournaments. So the tournaments are a huge aspect of esport teams in particular, but the other larger aspect is viewership,
yeah,
is the audience that is watching it. I like to give this example because a lot of people ask us about it, is why don't we have big esports happening with FIFA or any other sport games? The
Mm.
reason being the viewership isn't as much. The player base is huge because
Yeah,
it's relatable for all the traditional sports fans that watch football.
yeah,
So they love to play FIFA. But
yeah,
how many of them are actually watching FIFA esports, right? Instead, they go and watch Man U and watch their favorite team.
correct.
They
Yeah,
don't necessarily watch the game being played. They go and watch the actual sport. So the viewership isn't as much. And when the viewership drops, the sponsorship isn't that great. So tournament organizers aren't very incentivized to go and host a tournament for that particular game. Yes, they'll get a lot of people playing the tournament. They may not get enough people watching it. So viewership does play a significant role in the scale of the game.
yeah. So I saw that I think you took your first team to the World Cup last year, right?
Yes. We took Team India as
So what
well
was
as
that
Team Singapore.
experience
So we
like?
managed two teams for the Overwatch World Cup.
So what was that experience like?
Oh, it was absolutely amazing. So we actually have been trying this for a long time. So India wasn't even eligible for the Overwatch World Cup till we stepped into the picture. Took a lot of back and forth emails and really meeting with the team at Blizzard and understand and getting them to understand what the scene was like in India and showing them the
Mm.
growth and progression of Overwatch. Like, so Overwatch is really close to art. We started with Overwatch. I told you I played on the team before, and that's
Yeah,
really the first team that we got on board, and then expanded to Singapore and South Korea. So our entire growth, progression, and our birth in esports has been because of Overwatch. So for us, it was really close. That's why we really pestered Blizzard, and they were really nice and worked very well with us to ensure that India is eligible for players in the country. Then we went with them, funded the entire efforts, both for Team India as well as Team Singapore. Took them to the World Cup in LA. And huge shout out to our sponsors, Razer as well as Harrisburg University. They really helped us out. They gave us all the gear that we needed, and they've been really supportive for us even after, and working closely with us on promoting our other teams and providing us all the things that we need.
yeah.
But that's really what it was. It was taking a team that no one had even heard of, going to India, and we had the opportunity to meet Jeff Kaplan and the entire team, the creators of the game, and they were so happy to see Team India there.
Yeah.
And it was just for them as well, right? They want inclusion, they want more people there. It's just that before us, no one really took the effort to get in touch with Blizzard and show them how big the scene is in India, and really showcase what we are doing for the community, and that there is a community in Overwatch India to cater to.
That's amazing. You brought up Razer just now. So I think yesterday I saw you guys put up a post about your partnership with Razer, right?
Yeah, so that's been in the works for a while. So we actually initiated the partnership around mid of last year, and we've just been scaling up over the past few months, and it's been a great experience working with them. They are looking at expanding a lot, and hopefully we'll have a lot of Razer presence in India. We have our fingers crossed, and we're waiting for them to grow more in this part of the world. But in the rest of the world, Razer obviously is dominant in a lot of not only esport, but even gaming, traditional gaming and casual gamers. Razer is pretty popular amongst them.
So I had a question more from the
Sure.
management side. So right now I'm a sports management student, and
Okay.
being in India where we learn a lot about how other than cricket, it's a huge challenge for all sports to get sponsorship and
Right.
all that attention towards the sports. So esports is in an even tougher situation, if I'm correct, right?
Right.
So can you
Mhm.
talk to me about the challenges you face when you actually
We spend majority of our time convincing people about what esports is, and trying to explain to them. So I'll tell you, this is a situation that we face even with investors, where a normal startup gets about 20 minutes to pitch their startup. We get 5. The reason being, we have to spend 15 minutes explaining what esports is, and then 5 minutes talking about global esports, which
Yeah.
every other startup doesn't really have that issue, right? Because they just talk about their startup, their company, their idea, their execution, their problems, their solutions. We have to spend 15 minutes educating the market about what esports is, because most of the people, especially the ones that are handling the marketing budgets for non-endemic brands, don't even know about esports. Like, they've never heard
Yeah.
of it. They just know that gaming is a thing, but that's about it. They don't know
Yeah.
anything else about it. So a lot of our
That's
time and
like,
effort has gone into educating the market that, what people call first mover advantage. This is something we see as a first mover disadvantage, is we're really having to educate the market, because now anyone that comes after us, example, we've spoken to XYZ brands. Anyone that comes in after us and talks to them, they don't need to spend the same 15 minutes pitching and explaining what esports is, right? They
yeah.
just go in and straight talk about their company and what they do and why they do it better.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for us, it's just the growing curve, and that's what happens when you are at the growth and really rising with the wave of esports, and really being there at the forefront of making sure that we go from point A to point B in the scale of things. That's what happens. It is the first mover's disadvantage. A lot of people only talk about the advantages. There are a fair bunch of disadvantages as well.
Yeah. And another thing that differs you guys from traditional sports is the way in which you guys can engage with your fans and create new fans. In a traditional sport, you'll have your
Right.
stadiums where you can engage with them properly through events and stuff like that. So since it's very different for you, how do you guys do that?
Honestly, I think the number one way for engagement right now is social media. Like, we have a
Okay.
lot of our athletes that do regular live sessions, whether it's on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube, and a lot of them are creating content, making sure that they have the right amount of content on YouTube or Instagram to ensure that people not only have a sneak peek into their lives, but also get a chance to experience what it's like to be an esports athlete or a content creator, and probably help them along the way to follow their journey, and probably give them that kickstart that they need to
Yeah.
go towards building what they require towards their future.
Yeah. Can you talk to me a little about the ecosystem in India for esports? Because most of us are not that aware of even the teams that are there. I am personally aware of only 3 teams: Umamba,
Right.
Patek, and Global Esports. I'm
Right.
not.
So there are a bunch of teams, but obviously it's not at the stage at which we would want it. It's still really growing, and that's perfectly fine, right? Because India is a new and emerging market. We really have the advantage of numbers at our hands, definitely, and we are a mobile-first market. So we are seeing the shift very quickly and very rapidly towards mobile esports. And when it comes to other countries, a lot of them are still primarily sticking with console and PC game, esports organizations.
Yeah.
Mobile is just a novelty for them. While in India now, if you see, there are more mobile esports organizations than PC and console combined.
Okay.
So the scale at which mobile esports is growing in India is great, and in fact, India is becoming the epicenter for mobile esports across the globe. Where already in terms of PUBG Mobile, there's no country that even comes close to the numbers that India is providing. India has become such an important market. So we are blessed with this unique opportunity where, for the first time in an industry, especially as cutting edge as esports, we have the opportunity to be the forerunners and not the followers. Because in every other industry, everything first happens in the West or in South Korea, and then a few years later it comes to India. But for the first time in the in the world, probably the first time in the world, I'm not sure of any other industry or sector that this may have happened in, but
Yeah.
in esports, we have this golden opportunity where India can lead the pack and not follow.
Yeah.
So we're really, really fortunate that esports as a sector has been around in India, like I said, really, really far back. Sorry, I'm going to have to get that, perks of working
Cool.
from home.
We will basically talk about the ecosystem in India and how it looks very prosperous.
Really fortunate that we have the opportunity to kind of lead the pack instead of follow. Content creators, the followers, and the viewership and the subscriber base that comes from India far supersedes a lot of the other countries. So
Yeah. So
what a lot of people see as an immature market, I see as the forerunners in a lot of ways.
yeah, that's a very optimistic future for us then. The way you speak about.
Yes, it is.
So lately in the esports industry internationally, we've seen a major increase in viewership and attendance of actual stadium events, and you've seen
Right.
celebrities attend these games and all that. So
Mhm.
I think lies ahead for the whole entire industry.
Wow. So I love saying this. So gaming and the esports industry is still technically a niche, but
Okay.
there has been billions of dollars invested into it in the past few years. There has been billions of dollars made in revenue in the past few years, and the current audience and the viewership for it is close to about 400 million.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not mass yet; it's still niche, but 400 million is a huge number that we cannot ignore. The fact is, we still call it niche because it still hasn't crossed, that billion mark, which is great for us because that just means we can grow so much. We're
Yeah.
already at a point where we are filling out stadiums. Where the viewership for esports is far more than traditional sports. Where League of Legends Worlds last year peaked at I think about 90. No, it was 107 million viewers. Where I think even the IPL's online viewership was less than that. And we were more than the Super Bowl. We were more than the NBA and the NBA finals, and a lot of the other traditional sports. Where even in terms of prize money, we are now superseding traditional sports, and those have billions of people watching them. So with the fewer viewership that we have, if we are managing to do numbers far more than traditional sports, I see a really, really bright future for esports. And the good thing is that a lot of the youngsters, right? There are a lot of these from these 400 million people. Majority of them are below the age of 25. Now the good thing is, as these people grow up, they're not suddenly going to get into traditional sports. They'll continue watching esports. So that
Yeah.
number is just going to go up higher, and they're going to spend more time engaging and watching their favorite esport titles because that's a sport they've grown up watching. That's a
Yeah.
sport they've grown up attached to, and that's a sport that they've become fans of.
Yeah.
So that number will just keep on rising. And now, especially with everything that's happening around us, traditional sports in its current form has come to an absolute standstill.
Yeah.
Esports, it's still going. There's still tournaments happening. There's still big, large scale, major events happening across the globe. It's just moved online. And in
Yeah.
fact, as you rightly said at the start of this podcast, the viewership, the player base, and the everything, both for esports and casual gaming, has gone up remarkably. And it's
Yeah.
only going to go higher now.
Yeah, you spoke about some esports tournaments that are still going on. So if people want to actually follow this, the Overwatch League, the ESL Pro League, and Korean Champions League is actually going on right now. It's just been switched to an online
Right.
platform. And
Yep.
something that's really interesting that I found out recently was a merger between traditional sports and esports. Was
Mhm.
one was launching a sim racing series, like a virtual Grand Prix, basically, where
Oh yeah, and they got a lot of their racers to play the game, right?
yeah, it got F1 drivers and esport athletes to
Nice. Yeah.
together.
Yeah, I read about that. That's a pretty cool way of merging the two, right?
Yeah,
It'll be really cool to see who actually wins because obviously the drivers are used to their actual cars, so it's going to be very
yeah,
different. And the touch response or whatever peripherals they're using, whether it's mouse, keyboard, or a controller or a touch screen, it's going to
yeah,
be really different to see what kind of feedback they get and how it compares to the actual racing.
yeah. Well, I think we can end it here. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to have.
Sure. No, thank you so much. And I really apologize for having to reschedule this so many times, but I'm glad we finally got the opportunity to talk.
It's not a problem. I'm very grateful. I'm so happy people can actually learn about the esports industry.
Thank you. And if you guys ever need any more information, you can always follow us on our social media. You can check us out on globalesports.com or Global Esports IN. That's Global Esports IN on any social media, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, or anywhere else.
And I think you guys are also hosting a tournament daily due to the lockdown, right?
We are hosting a few things. So the one thing that I didn't talk about is with this curfew coming in and everything that's happening with the outbreak, we are doing whatever little bit that we can do. We're hosting a charity cup for Overwatch later next week. We've been hosting Janta Curfew custom games for PUBG as well as Call of Duty Mobile for the past few weeks now. We're only going to expand that. We're going to be hosting a lot more community events. We're going to be expanding to more titles as well. Our goal is we're going to encompass about 10 esport titles and host not only community events but tournaments online as well as streamer invitationals for all these games, and all the proceeds will be going to charity and will be going towards the pandemic and whatever relief we can provide us. There's very little we can do as gamers just being inside. I think that's the biggest contribution is staying indoors, but we'd like to contribute whatever else we can.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for being a part of this.
Thank you so much, Abhay. It was great talking to you.
Yeah.